Thank you, delegates and panelists, for joining this session before time. My name is Vikas Bhadra, Associate Editor of ACE Update magazine, and I welcome you all to the power of solar in Indian construction and architecture. The way technologies are applied in design and construction of buildings have direct implications on the amount of energy consumed. A large part of the Indian subcontinent has, for the majority of the year, ample sun, renewable, non-polluting, abundant, and direct source of all present natural cycles on Earth. For building design in the majority of these regions, the necessity is to control and utilize this abundance. Human lives remain much dictated by solar and seasonal cycles. Instead of trying to homogenize living conditions throughout the year, the future is in living and working with nature rather than against it. Keeping this agenda in mind, today we have organized an online interaction on the power of solar in Indian construction and architecture.
The distinguished speakers for today's interaction on the power of solar in Indian construction and architecture are Mr. Yatin Pandya, founder, Footprints Earth; Niraj Doshi, founder and principal, Niraj Doshi Design Consultancy; Udit Mehtala, managing director, Building Energy India; Kaushik Datta Gupta, vice president, Distributed Energy Business, Jackson Group.
I would like to invite our guest speakers for the panel discussion on the power of solar in Indian construction and architecture. And I also want my editor, Mr. Prasad Nair, to join me for this session. Yatinji, my first question is aimed at you because you have been working on such projects for quite a long time. And also we have seen a surge in the use of solar, in the last few years. So I wanted to ask you, to what extent do you believe that India has started capitalizing on the availability of solar power in construction and design? And also, do you feel that it has gained impetus in the last few years?
Yes, it certainly has, which is a positive sign. And starting from an individual residence builder to sign was even a commercial builder to, of course, certain kind of industries have all been now at least checking out the potential for solar. So in the design brief itself, there has been an added feature of power generation, etc. So in terms of client awareness, at least this has certainly become a kind of one of the demands of the late brief, so to say. It has been aided by 2-3 things in the last few years. One, that the awareness in terms of this being one of the potentials, so not only solar passive, but also in terms of such applications, solar active and generation. That's number one. Second, most importantly, that now that it can be put directly to the grid. We had done this 20 years ago also, but that time, you had to have the battery to transform it into alternative current to direct current, and storage for battery. So actually you harness daytime, but you have to use nighttime. Battery cost and maintenance was an impediment, etc. So now that you can directly connect it to the grid is a very, very, very big incentive. And third, of course, state like Gujarat, at least, I'm sure there are many other doing the same or better. 40%, if you have up to 3 kilowatt energy, they give you 40% subsidy. And of course, that is metered and going directly into your account. So you get credited for that. So even your monthly bill itself, it's directly credited, and so on and so forth. So these 3 reasons have given a good kind of impetus and boost to the demands, even from a lay consumer to even commercial setup. There's been only one area where it has little resistance, which is if you're doing a commercial apartment, then the builder has to put this up front, but the payoff period, maybe 3 or 5 years, he's not there to reap that. So it is that segment that doesn't want to put it immediately up, or might want to not spend in that. But there has been places where post-occupancy, the association of residents have come together and they demand this. So then they can subsidize that for electricity bill for themselves. So, and the other compromise is that the builder then put it for the common amenities like corridors, terraces, and some of these common areas which nobody else pays for. Each apartment pays for its own meter, but the playground, the streets, the roads, etc. So this is where they have been putting solar. So whoever eventually has to take the brunt can at least be saved from those burden, etc. I think these three aspects have definitely given an impetus to lots of commercial, residential, and institutional projects.
I think that's a wonderful response, and I would like to hear a response from Mr. Niraj Doshi on the same thing, because he's based in Pune. And how are things working out? Like, do you feel now your new age clients, they have been very receptive to the idea of installing solar in their projects, much like maybe compared to what was the demand maybe, let's say, a decade back? Are they open to the idea? Are they open to the idea of investing a bit more if required?
Year back, it was quite difficult. That's why I made myself guinea pig to show them this is feasible kind of thing. And I'm happy to say right now, I got a credit of almost equivalent to 1,60,000 rupees of electricity in credit. So anybody asks me to put the AC amps, I'm happy to give them AC, if they want. But most of my places are very well ventilated, so they don't ask for it. So it's working, okay? So being a Gujarati, I just looked at it as against FD, and I was convinced that this will give me a little better money than fixed deposit, and I jumped into it. For clients, being my own experiment, it's easier for me to explain clients, okay, how they should not buy their next BMW and instead of that, put that 40 lakh rupees into solar system. I can stand and discuss that with the clients, and it was a tough journey to convince clients to put solar to the limit. Couple of projects I left them saying, if you're not putting solar, I'm not going to do the project kind of thing, because somewhere you need to really push for it, really. But now I remember first solar system I fixed, the basic I think it was almost 1,20,000 rupees per kilowatt expenses. Now it's almost came down to 75,000 rupees per kilowatt kind of expenditure per kilowatt. I'm really happy that Reliance is jumping into it, okay, and without hampering other members in the industry. I hope they make just like the phone industry. He made cell phone available for every common man. I'm sure the solar panel cost per kilowatt will come down to 30,000 rupees because of the huge manufacture that he will start. And secondly, so first is the cost of solar panel is reducing, or will still reduce if there are more research and this thing happening. And secondly, there is a crossing point of energy generated by solar panel versus energy generated by coal. And we are almost reaching that crossing point. The day it will cross, then it's a business sense, stop coal and just use solar, So we are coming closer to it. It's not happened yet, I believe.
Okay. I think that's, in a way, the fact that we are opening up to the idea of solar and actively considering, even though we may need to put in a bit more money, we understand that the ROI is going to be good enough. And I think we are heading there now. Baby steps maybe.
Government policies are also complementing that, like Niraj bhai said, but basically in Gujarat, after subsidy, it is 40,000 a kilowatt, including installation and taxes. Like I paid 1,20,000 for 3 kilowatt, so 40% subsidy allows you to come as low as that 40,000 per kilowatt.
In Maharashtra, they stopped subsidy for some reason. One. Secondly, it's illegal to sell that electricity generated by solar panel on terrace. I don't know why. Okay, if I can do that, I have a space, I have an infrastructure. If I can give it to the apartments, they made it illegal. Thirdly, it's more annoying as soon as you go for net metering, when there is no electricity, you also don't have your own electricity. I think these are the government-based annoying principles I am facing right now.
we are doing this rooftop solar solution day in, day out. I mean, we are selling it as a project. So with all installation, probably we are in a selling point of maybe 50 rupees per kilowatt. 50,000 rupees per kilowatt. So that's there. But the major challenge today in the building industry is the builder who's constructing the building. He needs to get convinced in it that he has to put a ROI system while selling these buildings to his customers. Somehow this is not getting worked out in, I would say, more than 80% constructions in this space. The day it happens, so you kept your fingers crossed. The day it happens, the day all of us, we reach that crossing level, this will come to as an industrial, I mean, at a business sense, as a business model, fully in the industry. So why I'm saying that? Why I'm saying that all these builders, being a genset manufacturer or being a genset manufacturer from Cummins family, so we are in all these building projects, some or other way we are related. So whenever we offer them, even at the consultant level, electrical consultant level, architect level, when we tell them that please include this as additional to your building project, still the resistance is there. So we need to overcome that.
But there, some developers have adopted this system that they take care of building for, let's say, 10 years. In
Correct.
which they provide electricity through their bill and charge each one. So then they can reap the harvest of that initial investment that they've made. So they do it for several reasons, whether it's maintenance of certain kind, whether it's electrical supply, whether it's certain kind of, like in South, they've put even the low energy air conditioners and stuff like that. So when they get into, so they have always another company which is about the related infrastructure or any sort. Then they can offset this even if they invest in upfront. But those who just construct and deliver, for them it's a little resistance. But encouraging part is that institutional clients are very much doing it. Even old buildings being post-installed with this, or new building being asked to be sort of at least with good solar input. So it's trusts are willing to put in.
I think yes, we possibly need a uniform policy so that maybe which comes from the center and is applicable to all the states, to see to it that we have a even playing ground all across, and there is no ifs and buts when we go from one state to the other. Now, Mr. Kaushik, there is one question which I had in mind. Like, people are concerned about two factors when it comes to rooftop solar. It is becoming popular. One is cost, and the second is is it going to look good in my overall house design? There are these are some of the basic challenges, like especially in case of independent properties. So one is definitely you have pointed out, cost is one thing which bothers in a price sensitive market, and second is how is it going to look in my overall design of my property, which I have designed with all my sweat and blood. So how are these challenges? How do they need to be addressed? And what about the storage facility part of the story as well?
See, a rooftop solar solution, essentially a rooftop solar solution will be a huge success. I'm again coming back to this I'm considering this as an individual house. So where the entire solar, whatever the rooftop solars, particularly rooftop solars in the individual house, it needs to be complemented by a battery energy storage system, by an effective battery energy storage system, which will be very, very compact. They can keep it at any part of their house. It can be part of their terrace. It can be part of their landing of the stairs. It can be anywhere in the house. So if that part today it is a little challenging and a little expensive solution, because when you supply this or when you design this effective battery energy storage system, these batteries are essentially lithium-ion batteries. And these lithium-ion batteries, though it is, the ROI is very, very good, but it is expensive. And if it is done, we have done some particular, this kind of, some sort of, we have done some projects, and those are hugely successful. Secondly, you talk about the aesthetic part of it. That's a part where it all depends whether project executioner or some sort of we are a manufacturer and we do the projects. See, if just to give an example, if we, Niraj bhai and our customer, we all work together, I think we get a very, very win-win solution for everyone, because it's really a very, very important point, and it has to be done, has to be taken care at the architectural level, at the architecture being done at the conception level, in fact.
Yeah, so just in his defense, I think onus is on architect. How do we integrate in design? And when we say rooftop, that's where I was widening its application. For example, our chhajjas to protect windows, they can be, solar receptors. So it's how you integrate that instead of regular chhajja, if it is this, then of course with its texture and finish, how do you make it, compose with your aesthetic, etc. I think it should not be add-on, then anything add-on, even if it's gold gilded crown, it is still lovely, but it has to be integrated, and then it is understood to be part of the system, then it's not out of place. And the battery part is not too scare, because this is only in a where there is no grid supply. Otherwise, nowadays most state connected to their own grid, so then battery storage is not needed. That is the biggest advantage for its popularity also, that I don't need to store it my end. It is metered as much as I'm giving back to the company, and company is metering how am I consuming, and deduction of that every bill is reflected. And both are independent statistics that come to you, that you consume 264 but you generated 100, so you're billed for 164. So not all applications in urban areas need to have battery storage.
I'd just like to add something here about acceptability of renewables and solar in Indian market. So one of the aspects is also if we are able to learn from the way things have been done in the UK or in the US, where just looking at more microgrids, looking at ways in which one can delocalize and rather have things at a smaller scale and with larger areas, rather than urban centers where we have very high densities, where the challenge is also a lot more in these urban centers, because the actual exposed area is difficult to tell, or rather difficult to just assume or generalize. Whereas when we're looking at places which are not urban, peri-urban or rural areas, we have the availability of that space, and it can also double up in terms of shading. And so there is also a need to look at both rural and urban a little bit differently, and look at how the payback periods or the amount of solar one can generate in the rural versus the urban, because in the rural you're able to directly link it to your consumption. The person is more interested in installing it because he's linking each of those panels to a particular activity on site, which is not exactly the same as when it comes into an urban context, where there are developers, where there's the government, and where it's a more who can give us some area to generate solar, and it becomes almost like an extension to the land game of creating area for solar. So that differentiation is also something I just wanted to add in. And if we can work with microgrids, let people manage and kind of control the output and bring them into the narrative, then the ownership changes and it becomes much more long term in terms of the actual change.
Just two inputs to add to this. One, in places like Germany, Australia, they have not incentive norm alone, but they're punitive also, that each one has to generate X amount of energy through rooftops, etc. So there have been norms of that sort also applied to certain places. So they're obliged to generate electricity by themselves. And second is that, as I was saying, I've seen at least about almost a decade or maybe a few years less than that, in Rajasthan, I don't know the same policy prevails or not. As I said, that the land is not so prone to agriculture because of the sandy, stony crater, then they have been doing whole farms full of solar energy generation. So actually it has been an economic activity and productive activity where land is a resource, and they can put panels. I've seen it at many places, that barren kind of land or a so-called farm, but they are generating electricity in big way.
I think, yes, certainly. We have started on a right note, and there's a long way ahead, and we have to carry on with consistency to see to it that the power of solar in Indian construction and architecture, we move ahead in this path consistently and see to it that we meet the challenges which come in between. We would have loved to carry on with this dynamic interaction. However, we are running short of time. I would now like Mr. Niraj Doshi.
Before we conclude on this point, because since you have a platform over here, I think a message should be given to the government that today we are running various policies across various state governments. Like GST, this needs to be stopped, and the central policy should come in this way.
A uniform policy.
And a uniform policy.
Yes.
Stable and uniform.
Mr. Niraj Doshi, kindly proceed with the closing statement.
PV is a present right now for sure, but at the same time, when Elon Musk is worried about the excavation happening for this technology, for the raw material required for this technology, which is huge right now. So I think the next technology which is coming in, which is electricity which is generated through algae, and that could be a huge jump into a new systems which can be integrated in the building also. And I'm very excited and looking forward for that kind of a technology. Of course, right now they're facing a problem of fresh water requirement for algae generation to generate electricity for the building purposes. But that is something, yes, we are using a lot of PV, but we need to look into the raw material which is going into production of PV and find means. Of course, it's a development, but it's never going to stop. We have to go ahead quite a lot. Thanks.
Thank you, panelists, for exchanging your valuable thoughts on today's topics, power of solar in Indian construction and architecture. We hope you've enjoyed it. Before wrapping up today's session, we would like to thank our distinguished panelists, Mr. E.A.R.T.H. Mr. Niraj Doshi, Mr. Udit Mehtala, and Mr. Kaushik Dattagupta. For viewers who have joined us today, we would like to have your feedback and encourage you to stay connected with us via our social media handles. ACE Update is available on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Additionally, you can also download our app from Google Play and App Store. We request our viewers to stay tuned for future interactions as well. With that, today's interaction has now come to a close. Thank you and goodbye.